So first, so here's one thing, right? The reason this matters, and I want to go back to something, right? Those of you who are critical, highly critical of law enforcement and the police and policing, it doesn't help anybody, and it doesn't help your cause, the cause, which is my cause. I've been talking about it for 35 years, remember that. It doesn't help anything to make sweeping generalizations and sweeping statements. They're all assholes, or all cops are racist, or whatever it is. What matters is for us to be thoughtful about how it is that we are talking about these things, okay? And so, cops are assholes. Yeah, there are cops who are, they're cops who are jerks, man. And maybe your dad, right? Like, you're not gonna think so. Like, I don't know your dad. But you don't know, right? You've never followed him out. I mean, maybe, has he ever been charged with negligence or violence, or, like, whatever? Has he been ever?
Actually, no, he's normally, like, he's more one of the chill cops. Like, my friends will always, friends, like, people that know me, they'd always, especially when a lot of stuff was going on, they'd say, like, bad stuff about cops, and then they'd text me and they'd be like, "Oh, but your dad's cool. Like, your dad's nice. Yeah, I like your dad."
But we don't necessarily know that, right?
Yeah.
We don't know that, right? Because everybody thinks they're cool. Like, I'm gonna be the guy who thinks like, "Oh no, but I'm a good professor." It's like everyone thinks that, right? And my closest friends think like, "Oh no, but you're a nice guy. You're the good professor." Like, we all think that, but we don't know that. But some people are jerks. Some people are assholes. And they are. And the problem with policing is that, first off, the problem with the critique of police is when you just make the sweeping statement, we don't get anywhere, right? It doesn't help anybody. It just divides us. And it stops us from doing the kinds of things that we really need to do. But the jerk cops are a problem for all cops, right? Number one. It's a problem for everybody. Number one, because it gets in the way of just everybody doing their job. It's like me, if I'm working, if I have a bunch of TAs who work with me, and a couple of my TAs are jerks, I got to deal with that. So, everybody deals with it. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to have that. You just say, stop, don't be a jerk, right? Be nice. But some cops are power hungry, and sometimes you can't stop it. And they want to stop it, and they want to fire them, and they want to get rid of them. And I've been with cops who are just talking about their other cops who I knew, and I'm like, "Oh, that guy must be a real, fuck." And the cops are like, "Yeah, man, he just makes life a living hell for us because that guy does X, Y, and Z, and then the rest of us pay for it," right? And you would be amazed, you'd be surprised at the number of conversations like that I've had about the cops who are assholes and the people who don't want that to happen. Right? Not to say that this is all, the whole system is troubled at some level, but you got it, right? So you might say, or some people, there are people who are more activist oriented about the police who would say, "Yeah, but I don't believe that." Here, let me just say to you guys, right? I don't believe that. I think most cops are a-holes or whatever. And then to which I would say, how many police have you talked to? How many entire police departments have you had conversations with? How many times have you sat down to really explore this? What do you really know? Where do you see police? What police are you talking about? The ones in their body armor, right, that show up, or police that are everyday police officers that are really working? Like, which police are you talking about? When you say, "No, but all cops," and you might say, "Well, but the police that I see." And I'm like, "Well, where do you see them? Under what situations do you see them? Under what conditions? How does this operate? What's going on? Where is it? What's happening?" Because in some situation, I have seen cops being like the most troubled, just like, oh man, just problematic, right? And yet I've seen, okay, hang on, I'm going to come back to that. Do you have anything that you would say to any of those, to what I just said there? I'm challenging actually that, like, there are a lot of people and people watching the stream or whatever who, first off, are just going to think that I'm just an apologist for the police, right? And I'm not being fair, and I should be more critical of the police. And I'm saying, but whoever it is, that for which I'm being apologist, who is critiquing it, how much do you, what have you done? Like, who have you talked to? What have you seen? Do you have any thought on that?
Well, if I'm supposed to be the guy that is saying the police are bad, I have the same mentality as you, because I've had negative experience with police officers, and I've seen bad things and some really bad things that police have done. But I also, when I'm back home, I'm an active duty Class A firefighter, so anywhere there's a fire truck, there's going to be a cop car.
Yep.
I know mainly all the cops in my town. There's a few that are problematic, but not problematic where it's, what we consider to be a bigger social issue, like systemic racism or discrimination.
Yep.
More like kind of dumb, like you don't know how they got their job.
Yeah, got
More of like little things like, oh, you didn't put your car in park. I'm not kidding, that's a real one. One of them didn't put their car in park and just got out.
Yeah.
It wasn't nice, but things like that. Now, my own experience, I've been pulled over, and the little thumb thing is what actually told me, shit, I'm screwed. Because I actually knew about that, and I saw him put his whole hand on my windshield, and I was like, what did I do this time? It wasn't me. Trust me, it wasn't me. But I was 17 at the time, and I just got my license literally 2 months prior, and I was in the car with two of my friends, Deshaun and Giovanni. Both were black too. And the cop, he's walking around, and he already has his hand on the gun.
Yeah.
And the little, I guess the catch for the holster, he already flicked that off. And his partner was walking around the other way, and I'm like, oh God, what did I do? It's like, maybe I didn't stop at a stop sign, my bad. But it eventually got to the point where they were yelling orders like, driver, put your hands outside of the vehicle. Driver, do this. Driver, do that. Yeah, they thought I carjacked somebody. I didn't. But, I mean, I can understand, like, even like people like Gianna's father, where everybody loves him. I kind of understand, like, maybe those police weren't racist. Maybe they weren't problematic like that. What the information they had, I probably would have assumed the same thing. A bunch of kids in a car matching the description of a jacked car. So,
and then you gotta say, but wait, what was the real description of the jacked car? Was it really like your car? Was it really different? This is where cops have to be held to accountability, because afterwards they can always say, oh yeah, but I thought there was a carjacking, it was kind of looked like you. Like, come on, man, seriously, was it, or were we just like
they did not have the full report until my mom had to come randomly somewhere in Long Beach, which is a town away from my town, to come act like Mama Bear for a second. Which is quite terrifying.
So, exactly. And then you go, and then they're already one step closer to a problem encounter, a dangerous encounter. This is not going to happen with you, right? You're not going to get pulled over ever, because it's highly unlikely. Because, we thought you carjacked a car. And it's like, it's this young white woman with, blondish, light brown hair. Like, and you're going to be in that really dangerous situation like this. It's not going to happen. And what we don't see and what we need to see are situations like what Connor is saying here, to say, like, what's different about him and the two other occupants in his car that changed that situation. And that's why right now we're having these conversations. And this, by the way, is critical race theory right here. This is what we're doing here. We're having that conversation because police need to be held accountable for this kind of thing. And so, how is that and why is that? Do you have anything that you would add at all? You don't have to. But.
Well, I was just gonna say I've had my fair share of getting pulled over. I think at some point, when pulling people over where it makes no sense, but also letting people off, who should not have been let off. In my personal experience, I got pulled over by a state trooper in Altoona going 85 and a 50. So he was like, technically, I'm supposed to charge you with reckless driving, speeding, and endangerment, and take your license away. but he was like, but I'll just give you failure to obey a traffic device.
Okay.
And I was like, what? Like, how did I get out of that? But even like, I want to be a police officer, but I have like 4 tickets that are on my record.
Yeah.
And then I'm like worried that
Yeah.
that'll affect my eligibility to be a
for
police
sure.
officer.
And it should.
But I mean,
No, it should, because it's really poor judgment on your
yeah,
part.
but I was a teenager. I was back in the day.
Okay, all right. Do you know what it stands for? Do you know? Yeah, all cops are bastards, right? Right? So we can say it nicely, all cops are bad, but what it stands for is all cops are bastards. And this is the level at which, the critique of police kind of takes this level. And what's good about the movement, the anti-police movement most recently, is that police are being called to a certain level of accountability. And that's important, and it's got to be. And when you see the data, and when you hear the stories after stories, right, it's important to have this accountability. But here's the danger, right? Go to the next one. This is from Trump's January 6th, right? The anti-police is not just black and brown people in the U.S. Everybody will turn against the police. The people who are on January 6th, who are fighting the police and beating the crap out of the police, are the very people who claim to stand for justice and law enforcement and uphold fairness and uphold the importance of people following rules and people, all of this stuff. And they're the very people, when the moment comes, they turn against. And so that's why this conversation that we're having here about what's going on and what's actually happening is so important, because these are the very people who, in the end, everybody will turn against cops. All right, here's the next one. This guy, what I've learned in my experiences with police, whatever this gentleman here is saying, this is in the George Floyd protests in New York City, whatever the gentleman is saying in the bullhorn, unless he's saying, just saying all cops are bastards or whatever that is, right? You're all racist. But if he's talking about we need to reform, George Floyd's death was murder, these kinds of things, most of those cops probably they probably accept most of what he's saying. I've had just countless conversations with police about the murder of George Floyd. I have not met a single police officer, and I'm talking hundreds, who I've spoken with, who themselves know dozens of people. Each one, I've not met a single one who thought anything other than the fact that George Floyd's death was murder, and that guy should be sent away, and the other cops for watching and not doing something should face serious repercussions. But you don't know that. Look at the cops in that photo. You don't know that. They're standing there in their shields and in their helmets and all their protective gear, and they just look like these militia people who at any moment would just want to beat the crap out of that guy right there, take their baton. But in fact, if he's talking about George Floyd's death being a murder, every one of them is agreeing with him. They're playing a role. They can't do anything. Their job is to keep the peace, to keep people from being violent, to keep people from rioting, to keep people from whatever the case is, right? Protect the state, protect whatever it is. They can't come out of that role, but they probably agree with most everything that he is probably saying. And so we're stuck here in this world of not really understanding whose side are we on, and we create these enemies and we create the divisions, and we don't really have a sense of this, right? And that's really actually quite disturbing.